This week's case study brings us a journey of an athlete preparing for their first Ironman, but not only their first Ironman, their first triathlon. Sarah has never done a triathlon before, but after visiting Portugal every year and seeing the Portugal Ironman, she was inspired to give it a go. So she approached us in December and has given us from December to August to go from zero triathlon experience to an Ironman. And we're 6 months into this fantastic journey, which is the halfway point. We just wanted to fill people in on the journey so far and help any beginners out there understand the key tips for been able to get to an Ironman and complete it well. So, Dad, take us through an overview of Sarah's journey so far and how the first 6 months has been.
It's a great story so far, and I can't wait to report 6 months down the track after this halfway almost summary. She definitely was an enthusiastic, keen applicant who wanted to do whatever it took to get her on the start line and complete this epic event. And I suppose the thing that struck me was she just wanted me to tell her what to do and how high to jump, and she would do it. And to her credit, she has done almost every session, bar some unforeseen circumstances. Her percentage rate of completion for sessions is 99%. So let's just go through the journey. She had not really ridden a bike, and she didn't own a bike, and she didn't have any indoor equipment. She'd done a few run events over her journey, but she was, pretty driven with her work and a very busy lifestyle, like most of us have. So it wasn't really a priority. But to go from just doing a few runs here and there to adding 3 sports where she had to really learn how to swim again, did not understand anything about bike riding, had rarely sat on a bike except for when she was a little girl growing up. So, the idea of putting a pair of cycling shoes on and having cleats that clip in to pedals is just something that we take for granted, and it's something we shouldn't, because that's quite a scary thing. And luckily, we've got this technology now indoor that you can safely train, and learn how to clip in your pedals, learn how to pedal with shoes on and cleats, and the pedaling cadence and pulling up and pushing down, all the things that we've been teaching her in the journey. And she went out and bought a smart trainer and got herself a bike and really tried to understand the technology, which is a whole another world, isn't it? If you've never been involved in riding indoor, you just don't know what you don't know. And it really is confronting almost. I feel the size of the task of understanding and learning. And there was nothing that she wouldn't do. She was doing her homework all the time and getting her family involved in helping her, because they're all on board with this. They all want to see Mum do this Ironman, and it's great. It's a great story of people getting around someone who's got a goal, and I'm so enjoying this process. And I think from the outset, it's like, this woman is incredible. She's just, whatever I say, she's going out and learning and researching, and just got the mindset of a really almost like a veteran athlete who just knows exactly what they want and just needs to be guided into how they can get to that destination.
It's not an uncommon starting point, to be honest. And if there's any beginners listening out there who are thinking about a half Ironman or Ironman and taking it on, you'll resonate with this, because generally a lot of athletes are coming into the sport and they don't have a bike, they don't have a power meter. So often when people are starting the program with us, the first thing they have to do is go out and source a power meter and go out and source a trainer to be able to train on indoors and get those sessions done, go out and get all the equipment. And so, yeah, it can be a little bit overwhelming to start with, and you've just got to take it step by step and bit by bit. And you've really got to start with the basics and then just build those blocks slowly. And we talk about a lot of advanced concepts on this podcast sometimes about data and power and execution, and we just have to forget about all that for almost the first 3 to 6 months of this journey, as we're doing with Sarah, and go back just to the absolute basics of understanding how to use equipment and understanding frequency of training, and just training consistently and evenly across all 3 disciplines. So I want to go through some results and then kind of go through how you approach the training and getting used to the training load that's required to build Sarah up to the point where she can complete an Ironman in another 6 months. So let's start with the swimming. And her first swim test back in December. She swam a 1K TT in 2:22 pace, and 6 months down the track, she's just last week swam her most recent swim time trial at 1K in 2:09 pace. So that's 13, 14 seconds per kilometer quicker, and basically that equates to 2 minutes faster in the pool. So from a swimming perspective, how did you approach that starting the training?
Yeah, and just what you summarised before is actually getting the frequency and consistency in. And we're not trying to set any records right from the outset. And the reason we get people to do a 1K time trial is not to see how good they are. It's just to get them to understand how hard it is to swim continuously for a kilometre. That's the first goal, because the Ironman is 3.8. And, you need to actually swim continuously somewhere in your training program. So it's great to go and do 50s, 100s and 200s and 400s as intervals, but you need to experience how hard it is to swim continuously. And obviously in a pool, you're getting to touch the end of the pool wall and turn, or you can tumble turn. But it's quite different to going out into the to the lake or to the ocean, where you're not getting any of that rest. You're having to swim continuously. So the first thing was she was really keen to get some technical advice. And as people who listen to our program know, that we have one of the best stroke technique people in the world in Brenton Ford. But Sarah already had someone who could help her locally, which was great, and we're encouraging that. If you can get some instruction, there's many ways of getting that. And she was still able to do our swimming program with the instruction she was getting on a personal level. So only swimming twice a week to improve 13 to 14 seconds per 100 meters is quite an amazing amount. And as she continues her journey in her swimming, she gets the feel, the stroke feel much better, because she's actually being, in the water, understanding how to get that stroke efficiently, rather than, we're never ever telling her to, you need to swim really hard today. Everything we're telling her is all about stroke efficiency and getting used to your body swimming with the muscles and tendons and joints all working in the best stroke, rather than you just throwing that all out the window and swimming as fast as you can. We would rather you lose 10 seconds per 100 and swim efficiently and get better, get your muscles used to the new position, and eventually you will swim faster down the track. And that's the premises we use for all of our swimming, is to make sure that people are not like the bike or the run, where we're actually looking for effort. In the swimming program, we're more looking for effort in your technique and trying to hold the right stroke. And they're the things that she's really good at listening at. And she's doing a great job with the swimming on its own. But yeah, it's just one part of the journey is understanding this aspect of it. And to be fair, when you start in the UK in December, you have no opportunity to go outside and swim. It is, it's middle of winter. So, you can't practice open water swimming if you don't live in an environment where, it's safe to do that. And so that's a hurdle already for her. But she's, we'll get to that. Summer's arrived. We'll get the opportunity to swim outdoors, and that'll be the next learning curve.
Yeah, that's a great summary, and I think I said per kilometer before, not per 100, but yeah, any increase in swimming is a great result, and the way we approach it is essentially, if you can get any gains while still feeling relaxed and swimming efficiently, as you said, and coming out of the water just feeling still fresh enough to ride and run, then that's the key winning part of the process. So if we think about the bike, we look at a 20-minute FTP test, which she's done very regularly. She's now done 6 tests over the period, and her first test, her best 20-minute power was 125 watts, and she just tested last week again at 156 watts. That's a 31 watt improvement. And from an absolute beginner, and learning how to do an FTP test and actually execute a test correctly and get through a 20-minute effort, it's been a great process. So one, take us through the improvement and what you've noticed with each test, and two, take us through where the bike training is up to now, coming from never actually hadn't ridden the bike.
Yeah, look, I think this is one of the scariest parts, is the technology of the bike. Not only the actual bike riding, but just stripping it all back and making it indoor is just so much easier for the beginner athlete, because they're not having to contend with traffic, pedestrians, hills, wind, all the elements outdoors. So it's almost like a lab experiment. And here, let's just ride indoor. Let's just get you comfortable sitting on the bike, getting a bike fit for a start, making sure that your cleats are positioned well for yourself, so that you're not going to, start your bike program getting injured because you're sitting in a poor position. So they're the things that we nutted out, right at the beginning. And I think one of the technological things that we push is power. And this is you would think not relevant for a beginner, but it is so much more relevant, because once we tested her, we were able to let her ride all of her sessions at her level. So she tested at 125 FTP, 20 minutes at 125, and her FTP is around that 120. And so all of her sessions, we would be able to give her according to that 120 percentage. So if you asked her to do some tempo riding, we would say you need to be riding at 90 to 100 watts. And so she could concentrate on being in that zone right from day one, and she's training accurately to her level. And then she can concentrate on the things that I'm telling her. Okay, your cadence on that session was meant to be between 80 and 95 RPM, and you spent the majority of it between 65 and 70. That's okay if we wanted to do strength efforts, but we're not in this session. So I want you to concentrate on getting the power right and getting your cadence right. So all of a sudden, she had key things to concentrate on in every session she was doing. And then once she's got the cadence right, okay, now where are you in the range of power? So she can concentrate on the power again, because she's got a cadence up to scratch where we want it to be. And so all of these things we're talking to her about how do you fix your cadence up? Just don't push down on the pedals, start pulling up on the pedals. So you've got a 360-degree action. And these are the details that we would go into in our coaching tips. And all of a sudden she's going, oh, now I understand this concept. And I feel like I'm pedaling again. It's just like getting feel in the water. You actually get to feel like, geez, I can actually pedal for a consistent period of time, in control, in the ranges I want to, at the cadence I want to, and my heart rate is responding appropriately. And all of a sudden, she's got quite confident in being able to nail all the sessions, because there's a purpose behind each session, because we're giving it to her in terms of power and cadence. And it's just not riding your bike indoors and hoping that you're riding 6 out of 10, or because she would have no idea what 6 out of 10 means as a ride to feel sort of training session. It doesn't, it's not relatable until you actually know what your 10 is and what your 1 is. And that takes a lot of time to learn that. But by using power, she learnt that in the very next session after an FTP test, what 6 is in terms of power. 60% of 120 is whatever it is, 80 or 90 watts. And she could say, okay, that's what 6 out of 10 feels like. And all of a sudden now she's got RPE aligned with power and heart rate and cadence. And they're the things that we're teaching right from the outset.
So where's she up to now in terms of bike volume and training sessions? How much is she doing per week, and how much do you anticipate she will do moving forward?
Yeah, and right at the beginning, it's good to have this style of coaching where you are trying to improve your engine as a bike rider. So we're giving her a lot of threshold riding at her level, and a lot of VO2 at her level, and that's the premises of trying to lift that successfully, which we do say in our podcast. If you don't improve your FTP, we'll guarantee your first 8 sessions are for free. So this is something that we know works, and we've built her engine, and we've done that really on a steady progressive method that has allowed her to go from, we've already said, from basically 125 to 156. So we've achieved that goal, and that's been the principal goal of the first almost 16 weeks of training, with those 4 deload weeks in that 20 weeks. And the one thing that we've tried to do with her endurance, and remember, she's only training indoor because A, she's not confident enough to be outdoor. B, it's the middle of winter and most of the roads are full of ice or snow, so it's actually not safe for her at her level. And so we've been able to give her endurance rides on the weekend where we're giving her a mix of zone 2, of recovery, of sub-threshold, a little bit of threshold riding. And so her endurance ride on the weekend has gradually grown from, I think it was maybe an hour 30 for her first endurance ride, and now she's been able to cope indoor with up to 3 hours, and that's That's not a flippant sentence. That is hard to do indoor, ride a bike for 3 hours with a structured program.
Yep.
And she copes with that really well. She nails all the cadence and the power. And, you know, if she was to go outside, it would be a breath of fresh air for her, obviously, because she's getting to feel the breeze and the sun on her back. But we're
Literally
actually
and metaphorically, yeah.
yeah, so we're actually starting to talk about getting her to ride outside now that the weather's improved, and you know, I've just sent an email to her during the week saying, okay, Sarah, it's time to go outside, and the method we're going to do is we're going to find some area where it doesn't have a lot of cars, and I want you just to spend maybe 30 or 40 minutes riding outside, even up to an hour, and then jump back indoors and do the rest of your session indoors. And then we'll flip that so that we'll do an hour 15, an hour 30, and all of a sudden, you know, she'll only have to do a little bit indoors, and she'll be confident enough to ride the whole endurance ride outdoors. You know, it's still got another 5 months before her event, but we've got to do this slowly and build her confidence about riding outdoors and clipping in. And for anybody who's, you know, clipped into their pedals outdoors and then they want to stop, you know, you've got to get that balance right. Otherwise, you end up on your backside because you've leaned over the wrong way and you couldn't unclip, and et cetera, et cetera. So all those things that are just common sense to a veteran rider, that's not easy to do as a novice. So, you know, we're trying to take her through really steadily and give her confidence and build her confidence, just like we did when she very first started the whole program. And so that's our goal. We've got her endurance up to a point now where we really need to add a lot more time to her sessions, but we actually need to get her outside to do that.
Yeah, it's a great example of patience, and you're really willing to do this first 5 to 6 months without riding outside once. And it's been one of the best things for her, I think, because she's got so much confidence in her fitness and her ability to understand everything about the bike apart from riding outside. And now we've got some time to make that happen and get that right. And I actually
just on that, George, you know, we're not having to worry about cadence, power, concentrating on all the things that she's already learnt. So all now when she's outside, all she has to do is worry about her safety and balancing the bike, because she's already understanding all the things we've taught her indoor in that science lab kind of training environment. But now she doesn't have to worry about, you know, people say to me, far out, there's so much to think about. I've got to think about the pedestrians, the cars, the traffic lights, the wind, the hills, my power, my cadence. Well, she's got all of those those statistics all understood now, and all she's got to now worry about is the environment of outdoors.
Picks up this is quite a point off topic, but cyclists riding with headphones and even the Shockwave headphones. I recently bought a pair, and I do really like them, but it has to be a very specific circumstance for the ride that I've found that I'm actually going to use them, because you do have to concentrate a lot, and your safety is paramount. If you're riding anywhere in a city, even though they're safer because they're not actually in your ears, so you get to hear the music or hear a podcast or whatever you want to listen to, whilst you can also hear what's around you. There's very minimal sessions where it's actually useful for me, because there's very little sessions where I'm so switched off that I'm actually focused on whatever the music or the podcast is. I'm finding that 90% of sessions, I'm so focused on my surroundings, safety, pedestrians, lights, traffic, whatever, potholes on the ground, the session itself, hitting the numbers, sticking to the cadence. Even on endurance rides, people say to me all the time, you know, what do you think about for a 3, 4, 5, 6 hour bike ride? And I go, you'd be surprised at how fast the time goes when you are constantly sitting in zone 2, going to the top of the range on an uphill, and then going to the bottom of the range on a downhill, and then checking your cadence and keeping smooth pedaling action. I say you'd be surprised at how quickly it goes. That, yeah, those headphones aren't always necessary. And I'm surprised at how many people use them when there's just so much other stuff to focus on. And I feel like it is a little bit dangerous. Anyway, that's a completely off topic, but it did remind me of, I recently took a friend out for his first ever ride outdoors, and we went around a circuit where it was a 5K loop, and it was a pretty closed loop. It was just all left turns, which in the Southern Hemisphere means it's, you know, you're not having to cross any traffic, but there's one set of traffic lights. And I said to him at the start, I said, it's a rite of passage that every single rider who clips in the first ride will fall off. You'll forget at the lights to unclip on which way you're going to go, and you'll unclip your right foot, but lean left, and you'll fall over. So I shouldn't have foreshadowed him that much, I don't think, but I said, just really concentrate when we hit this light once per lap, that if it's a red light, think about which foot you're going to unclip and then lean that way. And sure enough, halfway through the ride, you forget these things, and he unclipped his, I can't remember which way it was, but he unclipped it one way and started leaning the other way, and then started panicking, and he just nailed his foot out at the last second and held it up. And I said, well, you didn't quite do the rite of passage, you actually held yourself up, which is really pleasing. But it just shows that preparing for an Ironman, there is so much to learn, and this is going to be a 9, 10, 11, 12-month process, and Sarah will be learning things right up until the day of and on race day. Because she's learned so much so far, but she has so much more to go in terms of once she takes it outside, it's a whole new ball game. So yeah, very good progress so far in terms of fitness and learning, but yeah, more to come. And so that takes us to the run. You've seen great improvements across 5, 10K and progressive half marathons, building up to those longer distance. And I think the key part here is her running's coming along so well that her 5K and 10K and longer distance runs off the bike are now faster than her original 5K fresh that she did in December. So that's a great improvement to see.
Yeah, right across the board. She started off at, I think it was way back in January we first did a test around 5-minute K pace for a 5K, which is really solid running in anybody's book. And now she can run off the bike 24 minutes, so 450. So she's probably, we haven't done a 5K fresh because we've been concentrating on longer runs, 10Ks, 15Ks, half marathons. But if we did test her over a 5K, she'd be definitely in the 23s by now. The fact that she can run 24 minutes off the bike, when she first started, she was basically running 25 minutes fresh. So, and a couple of her long runs, it's been quite amazing to see her last 5K be, fast as what she did when she first started her fresh 5K. So she's already run 15K and then finished her last 5K, really great negative split, faster than she did when she started the program after 15K of running it. And to me, that's great perspective of where you are and where you've come from. And to be fair, she already was running a little bit over the journey of her last 10 or 15 years. But the improvement she's been having is a reflection of the consistency she's doing in her training and understanding how to manage a running session. Not only a time trial, but all of her runs have been, basically trying to guide her into zones, and then when she gets to do these trial days, every 3 or 4 weeks, she's actually learning how to execute properly, and she learnt right from the outset. You take off too hard as a runner, and it's going to be a hugely horrible experience. Whether you're doing a half marathon or a marathon or a 5K, you're going to have a period in that run, if you've started too hard, where it's just not enjoyable to finish because you're hanging on. And, obviously we get people do the extreme where they just start off too slow and then end up running way too fast at the end because they've not measured it well. But that's what the purpose of doing these trials is, to get you practiced at executing and managing the run, whether it's a 16K run or a 21K run or a 5K run. Or 1K intervals. You're just trying to measure your effort across the time that you're being asked to. And that's something she's really done well. And she's got that concept down on the bike as a swimmer and as a runner now, right from the start. And that's another reason why it's really good to test people, is to get them used to that skill of execution. And I know people get anxiety about testing because that word testing scares the hell out of everybody because it means you're being measured. But it's like, we say this a lot, the priority for testing is for you to learn the skill of execution. That is the key priority to testing. And then we can also find out how much you're improving. That is another valid reason for doing it. But the priority is to get you used to that. So when it comes to your important day, whether it's an Ironman or a 5K fun run, that's your big event, that you actually have the execution part down pat. As long as you've done the training and preparation, you'll have a great day because you've actually measured your effort. You've done the session or the race around your ability because you've measured the effort properly in the execution of the event. And that's what the whole purpose of getting yourself prepared for, whether it's an Ironman in Sarah's case or just an average day 5K fun run.
Yeah, it's perfectly well said. And I think the last question I kind of want to focus on is what do you focus on from here to get her Ironman ready in this next phase? So she's already a good runner. She's had great progress. She's focus has been, learning to run off the bike and progressively increase those runs off the bike, and then matching her original fresh times, which is awesome. So yeah, where do you go from here with the planning, and what's the goal with running?
Yeah, and for the running, it's a more continuation of the same, except we're pushing out. I wasn't giving her any 10Ks or 15Ks or half marathon testing, and now after 6 months of training, she knocked off a half marathon a couple of weeks ago, and now we just keep progressing that. Just the duration of those runs go out to 25 to 30 to 32 to 36K, and over that next 6 months, that's what's going to happen. Those runs will just progressively push her out, so that come race day, she has experienced the duration close to what's expected on race day, and that is the key thing, to make sure that the time that you expect to do on race day, you've done something close to that in training as you've been progressing your journey through your weeks and months of doing not only running but swim, bike as well, where you're trying to get your body used to the time it's going to take you on race day. And it doesn't mean you run 42.2K. It means you run the time in training. So if you're a 4-hour marathon runner, fresh, and in a triathlon, you're going to be doing 4 hours 30 because you've got a 180K bike ride and a swim in front of you. You wouldn't go training for 4 hours 30 or for just run for the marathon. You would try to get some accumulation of time that would maybe split the session into two, run for 2 hours or 2.5 hours in the morning, and then run for another hour and a half. And you would progress in the afternoon, and you would progress that journey from, 2 hours and half an hour in the afternoon, then 2 hours 15, then 45 minutes in the afternoon. And that way you're getting your body used to doing that in one day, but it's split. And we're not a big fan of doing all those long runs all together, because the risk of injury and fatigue, and you actually can't train properly for 3 or 4 days after those epic endurance days. And if you're someone who's just new to the sport, you haven't had 15 years of this type of endurance training, then you can't do that type of training. It's just too much of a load on your body, and you end up being so tired you actually can't train properly. So you've got to be real careful. And that brings me back to a point where I think I wanted to say earlier, but which I forgot, was we're not trying to do so much intensity towards the back half of the training program. That's why we did that early, I talked about building the engine and getting those threshold and VO2 sessions early in the Ironman program, so that when you've got that to a new level, then you can concentrate on doing the long endurance sessions and recover a lot more. And so only need to do one high intensity session generally on the back half of this program, because you're trying to recover from an 180K Saturday ride and a possible 3-hour Sunday run, and you can't front up on a Tuesday and do something that's over the top intensity, because you're just going to be ruined, and eventually that will cause you to go backwards rather than forward. So getting that split, do the hard work early, and then once you do the endurance work in the second half, that's when you start to back off on that intensity and make sure that you're able to do the endurance stuff a little bit fresher than you would have if you're doing too much intensity during the week. And one of the other things we're really going to hone in on is getting her to do some shorter events where she can do a sprint race and an Olympic and possibly a half Ironman, so that she gets used to that whole week. Okay, I'm going to do a race on the weekend. What does my little mini taper look like? And we can't afford to taper for these races too much, but a mini taper compared to a full-on Ironman taper looks completely different. But the day before, the morning of, the night before, what are you eating? Getting all your equipment ready, ticking off your checklists, getting what time do I need to get up, and getting practice at that race organizing. And I'm not even talking about the race. I'm talking about getting used to all those little logistical things that you need to get right, so that when you do go to your main race, you know what to eat the night before, because you tested it in the last race. You know what time to go to bed. You know what time to get up. You know what time to allow for being in your setup transition area. You know what to do in the warm-up. And then you get practiced at the race and practiced at executing, the swim, bike and run plus your transition work. You get all that practice in these lead up events, and they're going to be gold for you. You don't want to go and say, I'm going to do an Ironman and never do a race in between. If you're a beginner, you want to have some experience in the event, and not in an Ironman, but in something that's either sprint, Olympic or half Ironman, or your own mock event that we call. If you can't get to an event, we'll create one for you that you do yourself. So these are all the things that she's got to look forward to. Getting herself confident outside, doing some more endurance, building the duration of her runs and swims and rides, and then getting some race practice, and that's kind of where she's heading next.
So my last kind of coaching question is, how many rides are you going to be scheduling outdoor for her? Because you still want some intensity during the week, but alas, like you just said, it's not all intensity. But out of the potential 3, 4, or 5 bike sessions you could do per week, how many are you trying to schedule outdoors compared to the controlled environment indoors?
Yeah, and we would take each athlete case by case. Someone like Sarah, the more opportunities, and if logistically it's not possible, then we have to wear that. If she doesn't have time to go for an hour and a half ride on a Tuesday outdoors, because she takes a train from where she lives to London, and that's an hour's commute. So we've got to look at each athlete. So ideally, we would want someone like Sarah in her position, where she has no experience riding outdoors, to get as much outdoor riding during this next block as possible. All the rides would be great to be done outdoors, but logistically that may not happen. But our key thing is that her endurance ride is almost not negotiable once she has the confidence to ride outdoors. And she's got to, we talk about, you've got to get the right course, you've got to feel safe out there, and the course has got to be reflective of what your actual Ironman race is going to look like. And also we want to get you in the hills and getting that strength and endurance component. So each person, no matter where they live in the world who we coach, they've got to find these courses that are hitting all those targets. It's safe. It's not a highway that cars are doing, 70 miles an hour or 110 k's an hour, and they're quiet roads where you're getting the actual session done the way we want it. So that's up to you. And you everybody knows, listening to this, well, I live here, I've got these roads I could do. I know I could research another few roads to find out where I can ride a 60k time trial where I'm doing 10k out and back 6 times, or I do a hilly circuit. Where are the hills around where I live? You're trying to understand what your environment is where you live, so that you can actually find the best circuits that are going to be A, safe, and B, get the goals and achievements you're trying to do from each session.
So this has been a real world example of how we're preparing an athlete for their first Ironman. We actually did a full podcast episode on how to prepare for your first Ironman properly. You can search that episode anywhere you get your podcast. Just search Get Fast Podcast. How to prepare for your Ironman properly, or do your first Ironman properly. I think it was titled something like that. So if you listen to this and you are a beginner, then this is a specific example of someone, how we're taking them through it. And if you want more general principles, that episode is a really good one to listen to. So as always, thank you very much for listening. If you would like to get similar results to Sarah and many of our other athletes that you've heard in the case studies, as Dad mentioned before, we have our 8-week guarantee that if you sign up to our coaching, and if you don't improve in the first 8 weeks, then the coaching is totally on us. So thank you very much, as always, for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.